Chapter 8 deals with the legal and ethical issues facing teachers. Ethics and the law. Something could be illegal and is unethical, but you can also have something that is not illegal but is unethical. There's some examples in the book they talk about is tutoring. You have a student that parents they want to pay extra money for you to come and tutor their kid and do a lot of other stuff. And even during the summer, that's an ethical issue you have to look at. It's a moral code. Some teachers will say, no, why they're in my class, I won't do it. Is it my obligation to do that anyhow after school? You got to really look at those deals and how you want to move forward. Some of the ethical and law and legal issues are going right now is coaches in their clubs. Can a coach during their off season run a club? Legally, yes. But then how do they profit from that club? That becomes an ethical issue that coaches in schools are dealing with right now. In our book, we talked about a teacher wanting to transfer from one school to another, and that other teacher being aware of the teacher's performance at a prior school, maybe teaching with him. And then it goes into some really good steps of 6 characteristics of ethical teaching. You know, we have to really look and have empathy of what's going on. The principal in this story basically wanted to concoct a plan and find ways to get rid of this teacher. Well, hopefully, and it didn't say, but hopefully they've gone through some training process, maybe mentoring of this teacher that wants to transfer. There's some background knowledge, there's some empathy, basically being a part of them and not criticizing them. I always love this quote in the book. It says, "It's easy to be brave from a safe distance." Okay, you need to go through these 6 steps. You know, it's going to happen. That is a great example because you get a team that you like and somebody decides to transfer out, and then let's say you're a 6th grade teachers, you're 4 of you, and you guys have all gotten along, you've taught for 10 years, and then somebody new is moving in. Well, it might not be the person that you chose. And they're coming in, and you know, these are some ethical teaching practices that will happen to you, and you're going to have to figure out. in the guiding of your ethics, I have some links here. One to the AAE Code of Ethics and the NEA Code of Ethics. But really, what we need to really grasp of is where people are coming from. You know, the spiritual and religious codes of why they're making decisions, moral compass, reasoning, secular guides. And I got to tell you and be honest with you, I have young kids in school, and some of the reasons they give, and their parents seem to say it's okay. It kind of shocks me. So you need to be prepared for what you're going to hear, because I guess it sounds weird, but times have changed. I mean, for me to say that, I guess I'm getting old. But you're going to hear some pretty crazy backgrounds and people's reasoning for doing things. But make sure you go over the human example, the spiritual and religious codes, secular guides, reasoning, and moral compasses, and look over these teacher websites that have code of ethics for teachers. Some contract terminology here is you've got four of them. You have contract, you have grievance, you've got a continuing contract, and a breach of contract. Usually as it applies to teachers, the contract is what is negotiated by a union, and it's a agreement between the administration of the district and the teachers union of what you can and cannot do, or what you will be paid for and what you won't be paid for. A grievance is a formal expression of a complaint, basically about an unsatisfactory working condition. So let's say your contract says you'll be paid X for teaching this class. If the district fails to pay you X for teaching that class, you can file a grievance with your union that will then legally handle it and try to resolve the situation. Continuing contract, basically the terms remain in force indefinitely until it's changed. Sometimes contracts usually last, if it's a union district, about every 3 years, and they go up for negotiations. Sometimes the district just says, hey, let's keep it like it is, and we'll do it for 4 or 5, or we'll just continue the contract as is. Basically, a breach of contract is a violation of conditions of the contract, okay? So you're basically broken your agreement there. The methods for getting rid of a teacher, it's been publicized a lot. There's a process called a tenure, and usually in most districts it's 2 years, and then after that, 2 to 3 years, and then after that you become a tenured teacher. After that, basically the first year they can terminate your contract and not ask you back after the first year without really giving you any information. On the second year, they have to prove that they're working with you and state the problems. On the third year, they kind of own you. Basically, you become tenured into the tenure process. You can also be dismissed from tenure with cause, and that's where it's hitting the public a lot, is that trying to get rid of teachers, bad teachers, has become really hard because of the legal system. And also, a lot of people don't realize that, but a reduction in workforce, you not guaranteed your position if they're reducing teachers. For example, if your credential is only in Spanish, and for some weird reason we are not teaching Spanish at that high school anymore or anywhere in the district, they can release you because you're not qualified to teach in any other area. I can't stress enough about the liability issues that teachers could undergo. You need to really supervise and watch your students carefully and document everything, because it will be called back on you later. If you see a student causing trouble, write it down, talk to them, and build a case, because you just can't come in and actually say, okay, student X, you're in trouble because of this. Well, you have to build the case. You got to take precautions. You got to watch for dangerous situations. by all means, never, never, ever leave your classroom unattended. Make sure there's somebody there, because there's dangers that can appear. If you leave your classroom or something happens to that classroom, you are responsible. Okay? Can't stress that enough. If you've got to use the restroom, that's the funny thing is, I remember when I first started teaching, the restroom breaks, you just can't leave the classroom. So you got to ask your peer or somebody to come, your next door neighbor, room monitor, to come watch and see what's going on. That's a big deal, because in the business world, next time somebody says teachers get it easy, say, well, when you have to go to the bathroom, you can just leave your classroom. We can't. We have a liability issue. Child abuse, we have talked about it in earlier chapters. It is your responsibility, without a doubt, to report the child abuse. By just reporting it to your principal may not be enough. They're obligated as well, but sometimes that principal may not follow through. Please report it to the proper authorities. Bottom line, even if you're suspecting that a child might be abused, you need to do it. The reporting is kept confidential. Teacher does not have to be certain that the child is being abused. It just can be followed up on. It is your obligation as a public servant. Self-defense, you still have to be very careful if you're protecting a student in self-defense. If there's two people fighting, you got to really look at your reasonable force. You can't come in and start swinging a bat. You've got to protect the kids, and sometimes it's at it's at your own loss of protection, because there was a situation happened when I was teaching, when I watched a teacher jump in to break up a fight. Well, he was trying to protect the other two, but in the process, he ended up hurting one of the students. Well, there was a type of a lawsuit. He ended up being dismissed, but it put the teacher through a lot of turmoil while a lawsuit was going on. So you got to look at reasonable force. You can't let them fight. That's something you can't do, but you always have to look and say, what am I going to do in that situation? You got to go in and put reasonable force in, keep them separated. The freedom of expression is for all. But here's my suggestion. You need to really talk to your school district, your principal, your authority, and find out what they are operating under and what they allow and what they don't allow. That is my first thing I would suggest that you do. Don't take your own flag and say, we're going to march this. See what the district rules are and what they say about certain types of freedom of speech.